Welcome to this week's Property Matters on Dublin South FM, the show that brings global trends to an Irish audience. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or by email at hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Your host for today is myself, Carol Tallon. Due to ongoing COVID-19 restrictions, we're recording remotely, so please excuse any poor sound quality. I'm delighted to be joined on the line now by Ray Cooke, Managing Director of Cooke Auctioneers. Ray, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Ray, I can see through social media and online activity there that your firm is keeping busy during this time. So, look, tell us a little bit about how you're finding the market. Is there any market at the moment locally?
There is a market there. I suppose, like, if we step it back to March we kept going until the lockdown actually happened. Now, obviously, with all the social distancing protocols, we closed obviously all the offices to the public at the beginning of March. I think even before they announced that for the safety of our own staff. But we just kept going. We did viewing by appointments, obviously cancelled all our open appointments, and we kept going. Now, obviously, kick into the lockdown, sale around 50% of what we normally are. Considering January, February and March, we did the same amount of sales in each month. We're probably down at the moment around 50%. We are actually up on lettings done. So the amount of lettings, there's a lot of landlords have contacted us. A lot of them Airbnb, a lot of other landlords that would have rented out houses themselves contacted us, and we've obviously been actively going out and doing the online videos, FaceTime videos, walking through, recording videos on our iPhones and them over to people. And people are happy enough because I suppose there still is a rental crisis. So people, I think, are forgetting about this, that obviously with the ongoing crisis in the healthcare system and with this coronavirus. So it is important that I suppose people are still, finding properties. And I suppose that's what we're trying to do. There's lots of healthcare workers there as well. If a healthcare worker got onto us, we made sure they were top of the list. And we tried to get them the location that they needed. And we tried around their time as well, because a lot of them are working 4 or 5 days, 12, 13 hour shifts, which are turning into probably 15-hour shifts by the time that they sign off and sign over and everything like that. So we've tried to work around that there as well. But yeah, look, it is difficult times. It is difficult times, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, and I suppose your catchment area, you take in Tala Hospital, and you'd be quite close. You'd be close enough for some of the other hospitals around Dublin.
We have 5 offices around Dublin. So, like I said, if you look at our Northside office, our Finglas office in Dublin 11, sure, you have Beaumont, you have the Mater. If you go down to, we've Clondalkin, Tala, Terranure, Racool. So basically, you have Crumlin, you have Tala. You've basically every. You've absolutely every single one there. So Connolly. So you have every single one, and it's not just also. We're doing a lot with the nursing home staff. We've just done a deal with a nursing home over the south side. They obviously had to put they were going home to families, and they were so. And there was a couple of guest houses that we would have as clients, and we've gone off and rented it to them so they can go back and they have their own room and facilities there as well. So it's not just nurses, and we've been dealing with cleaning staff in hospitals. We've been dealing with everything there now. So, like I said, they're doing unbelievable work at the moment. So. And I've seen a couple of other companies do it there as well. So I think we have to look after them. Sure, they're looking after us at the moment. They're keeping the country afloat.
Look, absolutely, and actually, that's a great point. I hadn't considered that. Despite all that we're hearing about nursing homes at the moment in the news, that obviously there would need to be exceptionally strict protocols there. So that does give rise to housing. So look, I'm surprised to hear that lettings are up 50%, but maybe I shouldn't be.
No. The lettings are up. We're down 50% on sales on what we agreed properties.
Right.
Now,
but the lettings have increased.
Yeah, lettings have increased by around 20% this month far, and obviously we have another 10 days to go,
Okay, are they all short-term lettings? I mean, what's the lease arrangements like?
In, I would say 10, 20%, 10, 15% of them would be up to 6 months, and the rest of them would be 12 months, normal leases.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're managing things in terms of technology. Are you set up for electronic signatures and can you do the entire lettings process remotely?
Yeah, so we have our own CRM system that we designed. I was with a friend of mine that he was looking after my computer system, was given out to me for years, and I looked at a couple of other CRM systems, but there was always pros and cons, that they were always missing stuff that we felt that, that might accommodate sales, but it doesn't cover our lettings and management. Or if we got another CRM system that covered lettings and management, but it didn't cover our sales side or commercial side of the business. So we needed something that fitted all those boxes, and we made one ourselves. And he works in one of the multinational tech companies, designed the first, and has been developing it really over the last number of years, keeping adding to it and taking away from it. And it's an absolute brilliant system. So we have that. So we can do everything online. We're getting digital signatures, doing everything. So basically, minimum contact as possible and as swiftly as possible there as well. The day of posting out a lease and taking 2 weeks to come back to you, that was 4 or 5 years ago now. So it's not. We haven't been doing that for a number of years. So we use like Hello Sign for that there as well. So I know there's other DocuSign. Use Hello Sign for that regularly there, and that's for our letter of engagements and everything like that now as well. We do that, So
from the tenant's point of view, can they engage with you entirely via their mobile?
Mobile, email, we have an online chat system there as well. So our website there as well. Obviously through social media network, we Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter there as well. So, but so the first thing I suppose we did was we picked up the phone, I think the first week in March, and we rang every single client. We rang every single managed tenant. We rang every single managed landlord. How are you getting on? How are things? We're here if you need us. We don't know where this is going to go or where this is going to end. But if you need anything, here's our phone number, here's our email. The office lines are still open, even though they're not being manned, but they're being manned remotely. So it's business as usual, to be honest, and it has to be.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in terms of sales, had you gotten, say, walkthrough videos done or video tours done of every listed property you have?
We were doing that before everyone else was, Cara, because like if anyone looks back at our social media, we've been doing videos the last 3 years, and all of our properties, and the nicer properties maybe, that looked a little bit better. So 50% of our sales properties we were doing it. We didn't do it on any letting ones, so it was very easy that we saw this coming. So we straight away just went out and we did 2 videos. We did a video that you could put up on social media, and we did a more thorough video that showed every single corner of the house or apartment or whatever. So it wouldn't be necessarily something you put on social media, but it's a more, it shows every corner. You'd open up under the stairs and you'd show that, or you show a cupboard, So it was just so, because obviously people, like, we've done a huge amount of lettings without people physically viewing them. So like I said, obviously they've let them on the back of these videos, or us doing FaceTime with them, and kind of going through it, or even the WhatsApp there as well, where there could be 2 or 3 of them there as well. So we'd have the 2 or 3 of them on the video. So if they have any questions or they'd ask us something, we could answer it in real time there with them there as well, if we were walking around the property. So that kind of really worked with us, and you'd be lost without technology, I think, now, So if this happened, 10 years ago, I think snookered, so.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. Look, we've been pushing and promoting technology for the built environment for the last number of years through PropTech Ireland, and what we're seeing now at the moment is that the people who embraced it really have a head start here, and they're able to keep things going. In terms of valuations, are you doing any virtual valuations at the moment?
We still have to do bank valuations, physical bank valuations, because obviously the financial institutions are still open and the banks are still open. So we like I said, I'd be a blue book valuer, so I still have to go out and do bank valuations. But obviously So
is that still going on during the shutdown? Because I had understood that was shut down.
So we have to do them, So like I said, now I'm only doing them on vacant houses. So so basically we walk in and it's a vacant house. If someone is living in it, we're basically saying, look, you're going to have to wait a couple of weeks, because obviously I have a young family at home here. So, and my wife and children have been, since the schools closed, have been, I wouldn't say cocooning in the house, but they nearly have been. So I don't really want to be bringing anything home, in this. So it's very strict guidelines there. We go in, we make sure all the doors are open. We have our gloves on. We have obviously washed our hands. We have our masks on as well. So to be honest, the valuations don't take that long. You're in and out within their bed semis or 2-bed apartments or 4-bed properties. So you're in and out in less than 3 or 4 minutes, basically. So I would be familiar with a lot of the properties. Yeah. So.
Okay, no, but then that's something that I'd gotten wrong, because I had understood that bank valuations were not considered essential work, so they couldn't be done over the last 3 weeks.
There have been.
That's interesting to know.
It's the same with our, believe it or not, even though my guys are working from home, it's the same with the financial services. I have a financial services company, which are mortgage brokers and so technically they fall into that area that they could technically still be working, so from the office, but they're not. But it does fall into that financial services category. Yeah. So now, in fairness, we are doing them, but obviously, like I said, I'm only doing the ones personally on vacant properties, because you can't get into new houses because all the building sites are closed down as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I run a query by you that came into my email late last night? I got an email from a lady. I don't know. She just heard an interview that was done on the radio, and she reached out to me in absolute desperation late last night by email. Herself and her partner, they were due to be purchasing through a local authority. It was a local authority loan under the Rebuilding Ireland loan scheme. And a week before they were due to draw down, the local authority asked for a letter to state that they were both in full-time employment. But unfortunately, this lady in question has been temporarily let go just due to COVID-19, and has a letter to say that she still has a permanent contract, and that that will be reinstated as soon as this crisis passes. But the difficulty is that the builder's solicitor now is saying they won't hold the property, and they're in danger now of losing their 10% deposit if they can't proceed with the drawdown. So they're left in a really difficult position.
Huge,
here.
and I think this is something that's going to be coming down the line with a lot of people. Anyone who
Have you seen any instances like that coming into your office?
So we, obviously with the financial services company as well, would be well clued in relation to the mortgage side of things. I think it's going to be something that's going to be coming down the line, because anyone who's been getting this, if we call it the €350 a week off the government through their payroll, and if they are applying for a mortgage, the bank will more than likely not give them that mortgage at the moment, because the way that the bank will, it's the typical banks. The banks are going to look at the company and kind of say, well, obviously the company can't afford to pay your wages, and then they're well, hold on, in 2 or 3 months' time, is this company going to go bust? So that's the way the bank, now that's the most simple way of putting it now, Carol, it's more technical than that, and that's the way the banks are looking at it at the moment. So if anyone has been getting that €350 payment and is going through a mortgage, they might have a problem there. Now, the way around that is, if let's just say they were due to draw down in May, hypothetically, go back to work in May, let's say, properly, and they can get a month where they're not getting that 350, the bank then will be okay with that. But if they...
Yeah, you see, the bank will, but if the vendor's solicitor isn't, what happens to the 10% deposit?
But again, now, it's not like even... there is a lot of people out there that still want to buy and will come back and buy. But at the moment, there's people, a couple of 100,000 people have lost their jobs, so it's great for the builder to try to do bully tactics there, but in the end of the day, do they have a queue of people there behind? They probably did, but in the last month or if circumstances not changed. So what I would say there is communication with the builder and have a chat with them and say, look, I'll be out of this hole in a month's time. By the time they went off and let's just say they were sale agreed with Carol, and all of a sudden they're trying to bully Carol there, and then they want to. By the time I go off and do all the paperwork sorted, it's going to probably take 6 weeks, 8 weeks anyway, and a normal market, and it's not a normal market. So like the bill, like in the end of the day, this hopefully will be sorted out for her. Like you said, she's in a permanent contract. So if restrictions are lifted in May sometime and people gradually, maybe like it was when the schools closed down and we were doing the whole social distancing thing, et cetera, and people will be asked if they can work from home. But I think things start to gradually open again, which probably will be June. Can't see pubs or restaurants opening until after the summer, maybe. But I think smaller businesses and main businesses will. I think once that happens, it'll be fine. But to be honest, I think there's going to be a lot of this coming out in the summertime where people are sale agreed on properties now, and now all of a sudden they weren't let go, but they got the payment from the government, and then all of a sudden I think this is going to be a big issue now in the next couple of months.
Yeah. You know, and look, I've been very positive about the robust leadership that's been shown by our government in this, and I think there was, some really fast policy making and good, strong decision making. However, there are still gaps and still anomalies here, like this particular lady who falls into this. So, it is definitely something that I think it's worth reaching out to the department, looking for clarity and things like that, because we can't have a situation where people are losing their booking deposits.
No,
because of this. So,
hopefully, common sense will prevail here. But obviously, we're talking about the banks.
Absolutely.
But I think the banks are a little bit worried, and I suppose everyone, I suppose my generation, are, because I suppose of the last crash, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, is this going to go on now for 5 years?" I think this is a short-term crisis, and what I mean short term, 3, 4, 6 months. We don't mean 6 years like the last one. So I think we will get out of this. Like the property market will bounce back, whether it's in September or whether it's June, because at the moment, if all of a sudden Minister Harris or Leo Varadkar came out tomorrow and said, right, we've actually found a cure for it, it's everyone go back to work on Saturday or from next week, we would have full houses at all of our properties because there's that much demand there. But it just means obviously people get jobs and normal life again, so.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I think that's a really good point to make. Look, absolutely, what's happening at the moment doesn't nullify the demand that was there in advance, but there will be some changes. And I think just in relation to the scenario, the lady who emailed me last night, obviously we want to look at ways to make sure that people don't lose deposits on properties, but there is kind of a responsibility here that obviously we don't want the banks advancing mortgages to people whose circumstances have changed to the extent that they may not be able to support a mortgage. So, I'm not in any way proposing that if an approval in principle is there, that it should be maintained, because in some cases that simply wouldn't be responsible. Yeah. But I think in terms of protecting people who are in that position, until we know what the likely impacts are going to be. But
just on that point, Carol, like it is still very important for people to know it's still cheaper to buy than it is to rent. And I guarantee if that lady was to rent that property, an investor came in and bought that property if she was to rent that property, she'd probably be paying 50% more on the rent, or maybe 100% more on the rent than she is on the repayments every month. So I think if I was that lady, I would fight for that. I'd open the communication lines. I wouldn't be doing stuff over email. I'd actually pick up the phone and talk to people. A lot of the people in the is getting or what's it called, the Rebuild Ireland loan or whatever it was called. Sorry, it's been named a couple of different names over the years.
No, but that's the Rebuilding Ireland home
so,
loan
like I
scheme.
said, obviously the local authorities are all working from home, and they don't have the systems at home to help. So at the moment, I don't think that could close anyway. If they're waiting for money to come through from there anyway, because those people are working from home, as I'm led to believe. So there wouldn't be any drawdown of funds anyway until those people in the local authorities got back into the buildings.
Yeah. Okay. Look, obviously I will refer this person on to somebody who can help, hopefully our own conveyancing solicitor will step up there. But look, we'll leave it there for now. That was Ray Cooke. Thank you so much for joining us, Ray, Managing Director of Ray Cooke Auctioneers. And look, hopefully we'll touch base after this and see how the market is picking up. So our thanks again to Ray for joining us. We need to take a quick break now. Stay tuned.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
Welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or by email at hello@iPropertyRadio.com. I'm delighted to be joined on the air now by John Moran, CEO of JLL in Ireland. And John also heads up the investment team. So, John, thank you very much for joining me today.
No problem at all. Good morning, Carol.
So, John, just we were discussing there the challenges of remote working. There's a lot to get used to.
There certainly is. We've been very fortunate insofar as about 12 months ago, we introduced a policy into the office which was called agile working, which basically meant that anybody at any time can work from home within our organisation. So luckily, we've had a bit of a trial run on it, but that's not to say that it's not without its difficulties. So at least we had all our IT set up. As we were talking about, Microsoft Teams and Cisco WebEx are now becoming buzzwords that everybody uses. That being said, thinking about it, property sometimes is quite a creative industry, so collaboration is required. And no matter how many video calls you have, how much video conferencing you do, you still miss that day-to-day contact of having your people around you bouncing ideas off each other. So it's difficult, and but hopefully it's temporary.
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. And I think the whole concept of agile working, there are so many benefits to it. But the reality is that over the last number of years, this has really, a lot of these technologies have been more driven by novelty towards innovation as opposed to necessity. And when we're using it as a necessity, some of the details actually really cause challenges. Like, for example, I saw in the first couple of weeks, Zoom meetings just went on much too long. And, there was almost meetings for the sake of meetings that felt like the meetings culture of maybe the 1980s or 1990s. And there was an element of that, whereas definitely by week 3 and week 4, we can see fatigue setting in. So I'm just wondering, in terms of collaboration, is there a better way? Do we need to be doing that more efficiently?
You can always do it more efficiently. I think that's probably fair. I think that there's always a risk in these situations, and most companies are the same, that you become very internalized. You spend a lot of time talking to each other rather than talking to your clients, which is, and they're the people who really need to hear from you at this moment of time. So we've quite an amount of discipline around it. So we have team meetings. They don't last any longer than 30 minutes during the day. And it really is just for everybody to update people on what's been happening.
Yeah.
But undoubtedly, you're right. Fatigue is starting to set in. As you say, the novelty has well and truly worn off. And there's great speculation in the industry at the moment. Is this going to change how people work indefinitely? I don't think that it will. I think all that will happen is that the people will learn that they can work flexibly from this. And I think more flexible working practices will be brought into businesses. But at the end of the day, where you need collaboration, I think people will be, I know a lot of people in my place would be quite happy to go back to the office tomorrow morning if they could, just to escape.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, one of the things we're seeing is that our homes aren't designed for all family members to be in at the same time while following their own respective interests, whether it's studying or working or playtime or whatever it is. But in terms of communications, JLL are doing a great job at the moment that you've just issued your Q1 report. So look, we might just touch on that. So in relation to your report, this on the office market, you're reporting a significant level of take up in Q1. But how is this report aging even over the last number of weeks? So Q1 performance, how indicative of 2020 market performance is that?
It's probably unrealistic to think that it'll be replicated. I would have thought a lot of the performance in Q1 was a carryover from the end of Q4 2019, where there were quite a number of deals had been agreed but actually hadn't just been legally completed. So of the nearly 1 million square feet of transactions that have taken place, a lot of those were Q4 2019 deals. I think what we're going to see in the market during the year is delay. So we don't think that people are necessarily going to go away and not do transactions that they would have done already. But purely by virtue of the fact that the building sites are shut, delivery times are getting delayed, everything is just taking longer and longer. So we sort of see about a 6-month hiatus in activity as people get used to the so-called new normal. So it's very, very difficult to predict. There's still nearly another 1 million square feet of space reserved already this year as well, which would have been, again, Q1 transactions. So adding the two of those together gets you up to a couple of million square feet. Then it's difficult really to see afterwards how much more will happen over the course of the year. But it's interesting. Big corporates are still looking to expand. They're still looking to take new space, but just at a considerably slower pace than they were previously.
Okay, and I know it's very premature to be even asking this question, but in terms of the report that issued, we could see that technology, media and telecom sectors are actually driving the growth of the office sector. Those three sectors, are they likely to be impacted? Are they likely to be ones that will change work practices after this? We start the conversation by talking about, maybe a changing role of future offices. So across the media, technology and telecoms, are they ones that are more likely to adopt more agile working or more efficient use of offices?
In fairness to them, I think they've been early adapters of a lot of this type of technology already. And they're also going to be winners in this, I think, as well. The big tech companies, the big biopharma companies are going to benefit and win out of this crisis, I think, as well. So they're already doing it. In fact, they blazed the trail to a large extent for a lot of people that a lot of other people are actually copying at the moment.
Yeah, are you referring to maybe office trends and agile working trends?
Agile working trends in particular, where the office is definitely more fluid from these companies' perspective. The presenteeism, which would be something that maybe a lot of professional services companies in particular would look at, doesn't really matter for these guys. A lot of the work that we do with them already, given a lot of them are US-based companies as well, we've been using all this technology with them already, so they're well used to it, and I think they'll just continue to use it and continue to adapt their models to it.
Okay. John, in addition to being CEO of JLL in Ireland, you also head up the investment team. So, are you seeing any attitude changes towards investment in Ireland?
I suppose the attitude still is pretty favourable to Ireland, which is actually very encouraging. We've spent the last 4 or 5 weeks talking to all our client base, bearing in mind that at the moment about 75% of the investors in the market are overseas based. So we've been touching base with them saying, is this going to change your mind? And they're saying, no, not necessarily. And they're looking at real estate again as a defensive asset. So they're still quite interested in office buildings let on long leases to good covenants. They're still very interested in the private rented sector in particular, so multifamily residential investments. Very, very interested in logistics because people feel that the supply chain is going to change, both arising out of this and also arising out of Brexit in due course as well. So those are the three sectors that are being treated favourably. Naturally, retail is struggling, so retail investment at this moment in time is off everybody's plate, which is not unsurprising given the difficulties that the sector is currently covering. And hotels and the leisure sector are struggling a little bit as well. Those are the two areas of concern. But at the moment, plenty of German money still looking to get into the market. Some opportunistic money looking to see if they can take advantage of any distress, although we don't actually see that much distress at the moment, which is encouraging. I think it's probably important to point out this feels a lot different to the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009. there's still a lot of liquidity out there. The banks aren't in as bad a shape in Ireland as they were then. So it feels like it should be temporary. My biggest concern, if I was to be looking for the negative, would be that it endures and goes for a lot longer than we're anticipating. And if it does go longer.
But by longer than you anticipate, is that really longer than kind of the 6-month impact that you're preparing for?
I think we've modelled various scenarios in our business to see how the business will show resilience to this. We expect to see some uptick in activity in Q4 of this year. If we don't see that and it runs into, say, the middle of next year, then I think you've got a wider issue.
Okay. And, it's interesting when you were talking about the sectors that are impacted. Obviously, we see kind of the hotel, leisure and tourism, were among the first to be impacted. But if we take a look at retail, it feels like this is, again, speeding up a trend that was already happening in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. There's no doubt that people were moving towards online. Like, it's interesting, if you look across Europe, the highest online penetrations in the UK. About 18% of their sales are all online. We're running at about 8%, I think, at the moment, but had the fastest growing online growth of any country in Western Europe. France, Italy, Spain, not really online places at all, but have suddenly realized that it exists and are going to adopt it as well. So I think this will accelerate further the changes in retail that are going to happen.
Okay. And I do think that that's part of a broader conversation in terms of changing consumer demands. And I think, so it would be difficult to attribute the impact when we look back maybe over a 12 or 18 or 24-month period. It would be difficult to isolate the impact of COVID-19 as opposed to trends that were already at play in the marketplace. But John, in terms of the investment, with 75% investment coming in from overseas, and you talk about kind of the opportunistic money there, looking for opportunities. In that context, how important is the leadership shown by Irish government and policymakers at this time?
I think it's very important because overseas investors look very, very, very carefully at how we behave. And certainly some of the tax changes that were introduced in recent budgets, increases in stamp duty, which were not very well announced and came as large surprises to the marketplace, certainly dented some overseas investor confidence. Like, they want to invest in countries that are transparent, have good legal frameworks, and are easy to do business in. So I think the government have shown leadership. So I think they've maybe made up a little bit of lost ground over the last, which they certainly in their last budget, they annoyed a lot of overseas investors, to put it mildly. So at least it gives them some opportunity to sort of say, well, we're dealing with this in a sort of professional, calm manner. And when you compare it, say, to maybe the United Kingdom, the United States, it looks like we're being quite mature about it. So I think that will help. And that's really all the government can do. I think sometimes we want governments to do absolutely everything for us. All they can do is create the frameworks that allow us to do what we need to do to assist people.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that's a very fair point, and it probably needs to be looked at in the context that we're actually still technically in a caretaker government, which makes policy making potentially less predictable.
Yep, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah. Okay. John, is there anything that we need to be doing as an industry to prepare, to get back on an even footing? You talked about how this is a very different type of a crisis to, what we might have seen hit the country and indeed the global economy a decade ago. Is there anything that the industry needs to be doing now to prepare for a strong return?
Yes, I think there is, actually, because I think it's people forget that property is fundamental to how the economy performs. It's the houses that we live in, it's the shops that we shop in, it's the offices that we work in. So we need to be able to hit the ground running day one, get back onto construction sites as quickly as possible so people can start delivering that opportunity. One of the biggest issues that we're having as a business at the moment is, in order to sell or lease property, you need to be able to get people to inspect it. We've got all sorts of virtual inspections and virtual tours, but people still need to touch and feel the space before they'll commit to it. So having protocols in place day one, how you're going to allow people to get into buildings, what you're going to do will be very, very important so that we can get up to some level of efficiency and productivity, because I have no doubt that the last 4 weeks productivity levels in the industry have fallen off a cliff.
Oh, yeah. Look, that's a very fair point. And in terms of those protocols to return, it sounds like maybe the real estate sector needs something similar to what the Construction Industry Federation did for the construction sector. So it'll be interesting to see if that kind of leadership rises here. But look, I think it's part of a broader conversation that we're probably going to be having over the next couple of weeks. For the moment, we'll leave it there. That was John Moran, CEO of JLL in Ireland. We need to take another short break, and we'll be back shortly. Stay tuned.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
And welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. We are, of course, recording from home as the radio station is operating remotely and in full compliance with government guidelines. So I'm delighted to be joined by phone by PJ Appleton and Adam Malik, co-founders of Bloxspring. So, gentlemen, you've both been on the show before, and we've been delighted to talk to you in your previous capacity working for a proptech company. But now you have joined together to co-found Bloxspring. So tell us about that.
Sure. Well, firstly, Carol, it's a great pleasure to be here. You're right. PJ and I have both been on your show in the past, and this time you get the double act.
Delighted.
So Bloxspring is a proptech scale-up engine. So we're really focused on helping ambitious proptech providers to do two things. One is to boost their sales, and secondly, to grow their brands and their profile. And PJ and I found that there were plenty of consultancies that were supporting the real estate sector, so the buy side, but less so on the provider side. And since launching, we've had inquiries coming in from all corners of the world, which is a great testament to the growth of proptech. So we've had interest coming from the Far East, from North America, from Europe. And really what we're doing is trying to create a fit-for-purpose venture which supports companies' sales and communications objectives.
Okay, and do you break that down between, say, proptechs who are providing a B2B solution as opposed to those who are looking to launch a consumer-facing solution? Because obviously the challenges will be very different.
No, that's actually it's a great question. No, we actually work across all asset classes, and really actually the companies that we're working with tend to fall into two sort of stages. One is normally the startup, I guess, sort of pre-seed funding stage company who are really trying to work on proof of concept and begin to take their product to market. And the second stage is really that kind of scale up, I guess, as you call them, companies who are really anything from sort of a seeded company all the way through to Series B or C funding. So a whole breadth of different companies, and it's been really interesting, Carol. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, it's been just fascinating looking at the different sort of solution and creative providers that are out there across residential, across commercial, all manner of different asset classes. And I think Adam and I have been just so enthused by I think the energy and the buzz around the sector at the moment.
Yeah, and well, what's interesting, I can remember launching. I launched my first property business back in 2006. Really, just as the big crash was just coming at us, and there's certain things that you learn going through a crisis. But you guys have just launched at a time when, I mean, look, baptism of fire is a complete understatement. But yet, you're launching something that is utterly needed in the market now, as in proptech is really coming into its own in the last 2 months. So, I mean, in terms of the timing is utterly strange, but are you finding it more of a help or a hindrance?
You're spot on, Carol. It couldn't have been a stranger time to launch a business. And I think one of the things that we've been really fascinated by is the number of companies that have approached us since we formally launched, which is somewhere around 45 different individual businesses. I mean, we've had, back-to-back Zoom calls these past couple of weeks. And I think the overarching message is that, well, it's two things. One is there's a sense of nervousness from the companies that we're talking to, and understandably. And secondly, there's a great appetite to adapt and to do something to adjust and to do that quickly, which is really where Bloxspring fits in. So we've been both enthused by people's willingness to change and also just the validation that what we're providing actually fits into this market.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask the tough, I'm going to put you on the spot slightly and say, you deal with startups pre-seed. Do they have the money to pay the consultant?
That's a great question, Carol. A slightly tricky one, but no. Look, I think I just add actually to what Adam was saying that during this period, of course, this is a tricky time for a lot of companies. Let's not pretend it isn't. But actually, a lot of them are thinking very carefully now about where they're going and what their direction is. And for startups, actually, working with us, we're saying actually for a sort of a comparatively small investment, we're actually setting these companies up to succeed really in the long term. The reality is that not every prop tech company will succeed, but actually if you have the right structures and the right frameworks in place, and you know how to sell your offer, you know how to market it, you know how to pitch yourself and meet the right people, then actually, this is comparatively a very, very small investment. So yeah, no, look, we work with two different sort of stages, I guess, of company, and actually, yeah, we've seen demand from both. People want to do business, and they're thinking very carefully about where they're going and how they get there. And I think that's in some ways, I guess, the lockdown provides that space to do that.
Yeah, and actually, you mentioned there in terms of business failures, we know that startups have a very high failure rate at any time. But I saw a really interesting stat that was provided by one of you at your launch, around the launch media. And it was talking about the percentage rate of proptechs that you feel were going to make it through, and it was like a really shockingly low figure, 5%. Was that taken out of context?
Well, I mean, first of all, that wasn't a direct quote from us, so we lifted that from an industry commentator, but we did actually think about the wider kind of message here, and that's something we do agree with, which is that it's an incredibly difficult space to succeed in, and especially now, given where we are in the current climate. But we think that there is tremendous opportunity for the best startups in the proptech space to thrive, and really, it's our goal to try and identify them and to support them in that growth.
Yeah, now that's something that I definitely agree with. In terms of, I think that this is going to really test businesses and startups that might have been able to skate by for 12, 18, 24 months, whereas that I think is not going to be possible now. So actually one of the things we saw through PropTech Ireland was in the first 2 to 3 weeks of the effects of this pandemic on the Irish property market in particular, we saw that calls and emails to PropTech Ireland increased by 250%, and that was in the first 2.5 to 3 weeks. Now, that sounds like a good thing, but unfortunately it isn't, because what happened is that all of the demand was coming for the same services, and our startups simply didn't have the capacity to deal with that kind of demand, but also they didn't have the capacity to scale. And now that's something, so when I heard about what Bloxspring was doing, I thought that was particularly interesting because from our point of view, I would say that the traditional industry in Ireland was much too slow to support proptech startups over the past 4 to 5 years. It meant that many ones that might have maybe succeeded in other countries didn't succeed, but it also meant that actually the infrastructure wasn't there to support scaling. And now the traditional industry wants all of these startups to be available to them and to be able to provide remote viewing and to be able to provide, certain technology in terms of bidding technology. But yet, because the traditional industry didn't support it, and because we don't have a great VC ecosystem here in Ireland, it meant that even the really good startups simply weren't able to scale to meet that immediate demand over the space of weeks. So, I mean, is that a uniquely Irish problem? Is that something you're seeing
I think
in other countries?
it's interesting, Gareth. I think I remember last time you and I spoke a little about the fact that, perhaps 5 years ago, certainly even the term proptech was still quite a sort of scary thing for the traditional sort of property industry. And it's been a real interesting evolution, hasn't it, over the last kind of 5 years, and property companies beginning to see real value from some providers now, and beginning to get more comfortable in terms of what they're looking for when it comes to adopting proptech solutions. I certainly think there has been a change in the property culture generally. In terms of the infrastructure, I think it's growing all the time, and it's so interesting because for example, there are now, the first sort of proptech focused media outlets. There are plenty of VC firms that are wanting to get alongside proptechs, certainly, all around the world, New York, London, and across Europe as well. And so I think the infrastructure is growing very quickly. And it's funny, actually, even following our launch, we actually had somebody say to us, well, even the fact that you guys are launching this is a sign that actually proptech is really growing, because actually, of course, this is another sort of milestone thing, if you like, a kind of a consultancy that's helping people scale. And so I think we think it is a really exciting time. Obviously, it is tricky because of what's been happening with coronavirus, but still.
And do you see opportunities? Because from one of the things that I'm seeing is that maybe some of the technology principles that we've been espousing over the past number of years, now we can see that, where we might have been able to talk about their applications, there was an element of novelty, whereas now it's necessity. Things like remote working, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, these were all things that people were doing, but again, more for a novelty factor than really using it to drive efficiencies across the business. And, the fact that we've spent the last number of weeks in a lockdown and many businesses were able to continue is a testament to the technology. But so that to me means that this should be a game changer for proptech. The industry now has learned that it cannot survive without technology and that it cannot be left so vulnerable again. But will the appetite be there to invest in the technology that's really needed for digital transformation?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point you're raising. I think one of the challenges, certainly we found in our previous company, being a organization trying to scale in the UK and Europe, was just around the education piece. And you do spend a lot of your time educating the market about your product, about the space that your product is playing in. And I think in some ways this is accelerating that education piece, in that a lot of the more traditional end of the real estate market are now recognizing that not only does technology play a really valuable part in the way that we work, but it's certainly going to play an even more valuable part in the future of work. And so where some proptech companies were struggling to kind of get in the door, I think this will accelerate their journey to not only educate those buyers, but also to be able to work with them.
Yeah. Well, when you were designing your business, pre-launch, a part of your mission is to help proptech firms overcome obstacles to scaling. So, I mean, in the last 6 weeks, the obstacles identified, have they changed?
I think obviously logistically there are increased obstacles because of simply just the fact that we can't physically meet and do business face to face. But I think in terms of the sort of the typical obstacles that companies face, I'll go back to that point about, I guess, and I'm talking about the longer term obstacles here, but things like the limited experience in sales and comms, and I guess those limited resources in terms of time and money, and needing to use those wisely in order to scale successfully. Those things remain, and I think another thing that has been really interesting and actually really exciting in terms of the conversations that Adam and I are having is probably an obstacle that's unique to companies who are looking to grow outside of their domestic market. So Adam and I have been speaking to companies in Japan, Denmark, Finland, Canada, all who are looking to grow overseas, and actually that in itself is an excitement, but it is also a huge challenge. And Adam and I are really trying to get alongside those businesses and say to them, look, these are the things you need to do in order to land in a new market successfully. So I think, of course, look, coronavirus has huge logistic issues in terms of what's happening day to day, but I think long term those challenges remain the same, and when we get out the other side of this, those are going to be the things that people need to focus on.
Yeah. Okay. No, absolutely. And in terms of the sales and communications, well, let's take the sales first. If you're working with a proptech startup that's consumer facing, so dealing directly with the consumers, how is that different to where you're dealing with ones maybe that are dependent on selling into the B2B market? They're actually selling into the traditional industry. Is there a different approach required?
I think this all boils down to the same starting point, Carol, which is just to take a step back and reflect on what process that startup has been using, what different stages are in their sales process, and where do they find things are typically breaking down. And I think that's one of the advantages that Bloxspring bring is kind of having this analytical mind of being able to identify where the bottlenecks are, where things are breaking down, and then helping the proptech companies to navigate that and to effectively streamline that process so that they can reduce the number of bottlenecks and ultimately to grow their businesses and increase their sales.
Okay, well, what kind of specific advice are you giving to firms that you're dealing with now at the moment? Just in the stage of containment and shutdown that most of the planet is in. What kind of advice? What can proptech firms be doing to I suppose make best use of this time?
It's tricky. I think the first point is, look, they are under pressure. A number of firms are under pressure, and we can't pretend it's these are straightforward kind of playing conditions, because they're not necessarily. Everyone's having to navigate this time. But I think three things. I think number one, keep close to customers. So I think it's vital that actually providers offer help to their customers in the short term, and really listen to them, listen to what their specific needs are during this period. And I think in doing so, they're going to really build loyalty for the long term if they do that. So I think that's number one, staying close to the customers. I think number two, as we're saying, is looking at the direction, using this opportunity to look at the direction of where they're going and where the market's going. So this period is potentially speeding up the sort of rate of evolution and change within the industry. It could be more like a revolution at the end of this in terms of the way people use workspace. So we can't predict exactly what it's going to look like, but be prepared to look at where you might need to change, tweak things. And I think the third and final thing is stay relevant, because I think keep going on the marketing and sales front. Do not become the kind of the forgotten provider that only does business when the times are good. Keep working hard to stay in front of the customer.
Actually, I love that, and I think that really comes down to the key communication side of it as well. And it's interesting. We had Anthony Slumbers on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he also made the point about how this is really going to speed up the evolution. It's going to speed up trends that were already in motion, but it's going to speed them up at a really unprecedented rate. So from that point of view, I'm sure there are many people who will look at you both and think sympathetically that this was not the time to start this business, whereas I would actually hold the view that I think that this is going to be a really pivotal moment for proptech in Europe, because we've seen traction over the past 3 years. We've been chugging away for many years, but the real traction has only come in the last 2 to 3 years. But I'm still not convinced we were at a tipping point, whereas actually I think that this might be the event that triggers us and that gets us to the tipping point. So actually, you're at a very exciting stage.
Yeah, we think so too. And funnily enough, we also talked to Anthony Slumbers a little while ago, and he said precisely the same thing. And you can't never predict these things when you're starting a business. And I'll come back to an earlier point that I made, Carol, which was just around there's only so much we can do when we're trying to launch a business in terms of getting that market validation. Of course, we spoke to some proptech companies before launching Bloxspring to see what the appetite, or A, what the appetite is, and B, are they willing to pay for it, to your earlier question. And I think, just in terms of how the last couple of weeks have gone and the number of inquiries we've had, the number of inbound messages PJ and I have had through Twitter and through LinkedIn, really kind of emphasizes that validation that what we've set up here does really fulfill a much needed place in the proptech landscape.
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree, and I think that this is going to be such an important time, and I think this will be a point that we look back and then we'll say, okay, this is when things really started to shift, and this is where they started to change. And I'm so delighted that Bloxspring has been launched in time to really influence that and impact it. So I look forward to watching how it progresses and speaking to you both again. So for now, we leave it there. That was PJ Appleton and Adam Malik of Bloxspring. Thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to us. And I can hear in the background the family commitments and everything are calling for you. So I appreciate the time.
Indeed.
That's the joy. That's the joy of remote working. So look, that's it from us on the show today. Thank you for listening into Property Matters on Dublin South FM, the show where property matters. Get in touch by emailing hello@ipropertyradio.com or on Twitter @ipropertyradio. Also, our thanks to Peter Rice on sound and to show producer Katie Talon of Hear Me Roar Media. We're back at the same time next week. From myself, Carol Talon, and all the team here, stay safe.